The essence of Catholicism, without apology, is about our relationship with Jesus Christ, the person of Jesus Christ, pure and simple, and living our life wholly and entirely in His grace. A distortion enters into Catholicism that makes it unrecognizable when it is looked upon as the church with all the rules. And then the standard of our Christian life becomes obedience or disobedience, following the rules, breaking the rules, or conniving for some kind of loophole to satisfy your troubled conscience. You see what a contrast we have between these two models. One is authentic, and it is a life of grace. And the other is inauthentic. It is a distortion. It is purely legalistic. Do you know who the most legalistic creature God ever created is? The devil. The devil is extremely legalistic, and he loves legalism. Did God really say? I open in this way because what I would like to offer this morning is not so much, a typical homily, but more of a reflection and a contemplation on sin. And what is sin really? And I'm going to ask you to disabuse today with firm resolution any notion that sin has something to do simply with breaking rules, and penetrate more deeply into the reality of the situation. What it is that we are doing when we sin, and why it is that sin is so offensive. And so we have to start with God Himself. And we have to talk about God and His own intrinsic glory. And what do we mean when we talk about glory? When we talk about glory, we can say personal excellence. So most times when you see the word glory, you can substitute personal excellence, and you're probably going to be well in the ballpark in that understanding. And so when we're talking about the intrinsic glory of God, we're talking about the personal excellence that is His and His alone. As an all-knowing, all-powerful, ever-living God without beginning or end, in whom all perfection resides. And He Himself is goodness Himself. From there we move on to what we refer to as God's extrinsic glory. That means the glory of God that exists outside of Him. And that extrinsic glory is published in the things that He has created. So we look at the universe in all of its wonder. We look at our world that is still incomprehensible to us in all of its wonder. And in these things, we see the glory of God being published externally. And in these visible things, we can see and recognize God, because He is the author of all that has been made. And so in his creation, God, as it were, is able to look out and see everything he has made, and he sees himself. He sees his perfection. He sees his wisdom. He sees his goodness. Which is why when he completed the work, he looked upon it and said, "This is very good." And indeed it is. Indeed it is. And despite the vastness of all that God has made, that we cannot even begin to understand or wrap our minds around, he nonetheless chose to crown that creation with a creature made in his own image and likeness and fashioned out of dust. We look at how we were created. What is it that gives us this divine image, and likeness? It is that we are intelligent and we are free. We are intelligent and we are free. Beneath our intelligence and our will, there lies our appetites. And with those appetites, there are various associated passions. We generally call them emotions or feelings, but they're passions. And like the rest of creation that is so well ordered, perfectly ordered, so too were we when we were first created. Appetites are good. Passions are good. But they need to be ordered. And they need to be ordered by our intellect that is informed by the truth. We need to know the truth of things so that we can properly reason. And properly reason, we may incline our will towards that which is well ordered and ultimately well ordered to our good, as God intends. But see, what happened in this perfect, elegant, well-ordered creation that God has made, in which he recognizes his very self, his glory. We're talking about his glory. The visible manifestation of his personal excellence. Well, we all know it began with Eve. And what happened with Eve? Well, I was talking about the appetites and their associated passions. I don't want to go into all the passions. Let's just look at the one that's more pertinent in this example. And it is love. And we all know that we love all kinds of things that we ought not. Shameful little hidden pleasures that we like to relish. But nonetheless, Eve looks at the fruit that was forbidden by God for her to eat. It was forbidden. This was a positive divine command. Why a positive divine command? Was it arbitrary? Was it capricious? No. That command was in keeping with all that has been well ordered in the publication of God's glory. That command was intended to preserve the good that God intended. But see, Eve allowed herself to become tantalized and captivated by the appearance of the fruit and saw that it was pleasing and delightful. And so she reached out and grasped that which was forbidden. Why? Because she chose to doubt the truth revealed by God and instead believe the lie spoken by the devil. Did God really say? Did he really say? And so when we look at sin, we need to understand this, is that sin, first and foremost, disorders what God has ordered interiorly within us. That our appetites and their passions are to be subjected to the use of right reason, informed by the truth, so that our will might be inclined towards that which is genuinely and authentically good, in keeping with God's original creative intention. Our sin disrupts that order. It turns it upside down and plants it on its head. That sin, we like to believe there are personal sins, and by that I mean private, with no consequences. Well, there's a little sneaky deceit introduced into our heads by the devil. All sin affects the entire body of Jesus Christ. There is no private sin. Who am I hurting? The body of Christ. Because if one member is sick, the whole body is unwell. If you don't believe me, think about what I just said next time you stub your little toe on the leg of your coffee table in your living room. That if you injure the smallest of members of your body, the whole body is not affected. You know it is. But then, above all and most importantly, there is a disorder, a disruption introduced into the order established by God. And it injures his glory. Now, you can't injure God. If you're thinking that, you're absolutely correct. God is beyond injury. But we're talking about the publication, the manifestation of his external glory in which he sees himself in all of its beauty and goodness and its order, and we introduce disorder into what God has ordered and declared to be good. And so we have to turn ourselves to the question that you potentially are asking, well then why all the laws? Why all the rules? Why all the disciplines? Well, as I already hinted at, none of the laws and the rules and the disciplines are arbitrary or capricious. It's not a matter of God is displeased on an emotional level, like we're displeased with the way people do certain things that annoy us and we'd rather they do not do them. You know, isn't that how most of the laws, in our country are made? Is that somebody does something and we decide collectively that it's so outrageous we want to make sure nobody ever does that again, so we pass a law. But does that ever prevent anyone from doing it? No. But see, God does not legislate the way we legislate. The laws of God, his rules, his disciplines, are published, are revealed to us precisely to instruct us in the order of things as he intends. And the order of things as he intends is that in which we must put our utter confidence and trust. This is God's creation. Everything he has made, without exception, and again without apology, is his personal property. And as his personal property, we have no right to disfigure what he has declared good. That means us. We do not have a right to disfigure what God has created in his image and likeness and has declared good. We have no right to injure one another, whose image and likeness God also created. We have no right to injure creation, the other things that God has made. We have no right to do these things. Because what is at stake is the injury of the glory of God and disfiguring his face, visible in everything he has made. And so, when we're tempted, temptations can arise within, because that is the principle of sin at work within us on account of original sin. But then we also can be tempted by the devil. We can also be tempted by one another. But it's to take to heart, what is it that I am truly considering doing? And what are the consequences? What are the consequences? To myself, to the body, to God. This is truly what is at stake. It is not about observing rules or breaking them. Confession is not a legal transaction. It is not a laundromat. It is not a place where you go to feel better. Confession is a place where you go to kneel before the priest, standing in the person of Jesus Christ himself, and with a broken heart, confessing the disorder you have introduced into all that he has ordered well. And to voluntarily ask for a penance to make amends, to make right. Because, see, as I said at the beginning, the one we're offending is God. The one whose glory we are disfiguring is his. It is to him that we owe our apology. It is to him that we owe our heartfelt sorrow because of the great good that we're sacrificing and the tremendous injury we are afflicting upon his glory. To get back to what is authentically Roman Catholic, our personal relationship with the person of Jesus Christ. To know him is to love him. And to love him is to live in his grace, because all is a grace. Everything is a grace. When we were baptized, we became the very dwelling place of God. A very dwelling place of God within us. In the innermost recess of our soul dwells the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And it is out of that principle that all of our actions flow. So it's not a matter of we go about thinking, how can we please God? Because sometimes when we go about thinking how to please God, we're really saying to ourselves, how can I make myself look good in front of others so that they think I'm holier than I really am? Because, see, nobody's fooled, especially God. And so that very essence, of our Catholic faith is this friendship with Jesus Christ, his dwelling within us. And out of that abundance of the grace that we live our life with sincerity and authenticity. It is not about rules. It is about love.